Since the passage of the Constitution in 2010, it's now 8 years. We know that at first there was a Supreme Court advisory opinion that said that we had to have enacted a bill by 2015. It's now 3 years late. We still don't have a bill. What you have seen in Parliament that has been tabled, do you think it offers the solution, and is it sustainable?
Thank you very much, Sam. I definitely would say that given that Kenya and the leadership of Kenya is interested in ensuring constitutionalism, that we do adhere to the constitution because it is the supreme law of the land. I would say that what we now have is certainly the best. I say the best because, as you indicate, the key issue has never been recognition that we do need to provide a way of realizing what is put in the Constitution, but the challenge has been the mechanism. And I think we have had a number of bills that have been proposed. Most of them faced the challenge that the numbers that were envisaged seemed to feel or appear as if they were going to give the common man and woman a very heavy burden. Initially, the numbers were proposed to be something like 80, and then with reflection, those that were looking at, strictly speaking, just going by what we have right now as the electoral body of 349, and then seeking to see after elections that we are able to do top-up in line with what we have at the County Assembly in Article 177, but which never seemed to have been ingrained in the Constitution. I say that what we have now has been a negotiated conversation by the members of Parliament, because they realize that indeed, as you indicate, Parliament as it stands now, if somebody were to choose to challenge it, would be seen to be, not in keeping with the Constitution. And so I can confirm that the bill that we have, the Duale bill that has been proposed by the majority leader, has sought to take into account this concern. And what we now envisage is that we would only need 21 women, in the sense that Senate is already deemed to be compliant, having 16 women nominated, 2 others, one representing persons with disability, one representing the youth, so we already have 18. Taking into account that we also already have 47 women who, although we would see that they are elected, they are running on an affirmative action plate because they run against women. And so we are looking at 21 women, and we believe that if we consider the kind of cost that Kenya would face if it is seen not to be honoring the Constitution, and then taking the 21 to allow the voice of the women to get in. I think as I conclude, I just want to also say, because I'm seated here, I'm a nominated member of Parliament. I ran for office in 2007. I ran for the office of Member of Parliament in Alego Usonga constituency in Siaya. And I don't think that my failure to be elected had anything to do with my competence or ability. I think there is a sense in which both for the women internally, such as myself and many others, and for the society, there tends to be a sense that politics is dirty. You know, I know people who even sympathize with me. They were telling me, really, why do you want to leave where you are? Very peaceful, organized place in the university. Why do you want to come out? And I think I need to get Kenyans to see that this is a short-term approach that has a 20-year clause, which is intended to help change the psyche, both of the women, so that they can come out there and run for election, and for the public to elect them. It is not something that is cast in stone, where women are just going to sit back and wait.
Just educate me as you talk about the 20-year clause, and the president is quoted saying that I do not know what you're worried about. After all, this is for a short while, and these seats will no longer exist. Where is that clause that it's just for 20 years?
The bill, as it is drafted, and these are part of the considerations, and I know Joy is going to help us with this because she's going to bring a legal mind into looking at this. What we sought to do is to recognize that there would be challenges in a context where it looks like you're just, so to speak, offering women this soft landing that they will have forever. But we also noted that we need to find some ways that would jumpstart, so to speak, or would make the challenges that women face in electoral politics, the violence, the different attitudes, lack of money, the corruption. And so ingrained in this particular bill is a sunset clause that when you're thinking about an affirmative action cannot be forever.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know exactly what the president meant, but I do know that he is aware of what it is that we have presented. And I think that he is looking at this and saying, what we would like to do is to allow that women go out there and run, because this is not going to be applied until after the general elections. So women are not going to just sit back and wait to be part of this. But after the elections, if it so happens women offered themselves, but they were not elected, to the tune that allows us the threshold, then the women would be in office. And we are saying in the bill that this would only be in operation for 20 years, so that within that period, we really are saying, get out there as women, get elected. Society also look at the women and let us reduce, if people think, the wage bill.
Right. And Joy, I want to read a quote here from the president. He says that women are the majority in this country, so let them stand up and face these men in elections. Do not just sit down and wait to be nominated. Do not fear. You are born with leadership in you. It is men who instill fear in you and make you shy away from challenging them in elections. In last year's election, we got 3 women senators elected. And how many members of the National Assembly? I think 16 or thereabout?
In the National Assembly, we have 23.
Elected?
Elected.
Yes.
And we have 6 nominated.
Yes. So for the first time, we had female senators elected. They stood in elections. When we passed this law that we have a top-up sort of nomination so that we are compliant with the requirement of the Constitution, what does it do to the women's psyche in running at elections? Does it encourage them, or does it do the opposite, to just tell them, sit back and wait for goodies to come?
Thank you for having me this morning. Allow me to state at the onset that I'm a firm believer in women leadership, and I am a woman leader myself, and I am passionate about women getting the space to have equal opportunity to offer themselves for leadership. There's a reason I'm putting that forward, because now I want to engage in an academic exercise. Let's think about this critically. If you look at a country like the United States, this is a democracy that's over 2 centuries old. And in just this last midterm elections is when we are celebrating the election of the first woman congressman, the first woman Muslim congressman. What does that tell you? It tells you that there are countries where affirmative action has not been used in the way that we are trying to use it now. And it has taken them so long to get where they are now. The flip side of that is that that achievement is all the more recognized because it's hard fought, which is what we did also with Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, even if she did not ascend to the presidency, it was a massive win for women. She shattered the glass for nomination at a party nomination. She shattered the glass in getting the majority of the popular vote. So in my opinion, for a woman leader, even if she did not ascend to presidency, there is no woman who will be elected president who will not mention the name of Hillary Rodham Clinton. Now, in Kenya, when we were doing our constitution, from way back when the clamor started, the Women Caucus was very strong about ensuring greater women participation. Now, the approach we used was trying to force the constitution, was putting it in the constitution to try and force societal change. The problem with that is it will be the letter of the law. But if society has not organically evolved to embrace the idea, it will always be frustrated, and which is what we have seen happening so far. The other problem is that the people responsible for drafting the law are direct beneficiaries or losers of the outcome of what is being tabled. That's why every time the bill is put to the House, it fails, because they're like, oh, which constituencies do you want become women constituencies? Which one do you... People are looking at it in terms of where will it hit them on the bottom line.
Sure.
At the end of the day, what we have, therefore, is a situation whereby, even if this bill is successful, we run the risk of having women in parliament for the sake of being women. Tokenism. And what tokenism does is you get women into parliament because it was not a hard-fought victory. When they get there, they sit and become wallflowers, which has been one of the biggest criticisms of some of our women reps and some of our nominated women these days, is that you go to parliament and you just fill the numbers. You don't have any meaningful contribution to it. Exactly. And the tokenism also, what it does, it becomes the antithesis of women leadership. Because they're like, okay, so these ones are in parliament. Tell us what else they're doing rather than earning a salary. So even when somebody is a conscious woman leader, She's told, look, but we've given you an opportunity and look at what you did with it.
Right.
In my opinion, there is need for us to have a better structure, better way of doing this. May I suggest, may I put it to you, that maybe we need to not just look at women as women isolated, let's look at our electoral system. Let me look at what's happening in South Africa. They have something called mixed member proportional representation, where the political party is the one responsible for coming up with a list that is, we call it zebra. So you have man, woman, man, woman. Make sure that the special interest is as well included.
Right.
And then the list is locked before the election. So what happens is the internal party democracy forces the women to fight for their space on the party list. That means you must be active in the party, you must be aggressive, you stand up to be counted, so that the party cannot discount your contribution in the same, so that they have to get you on the party list. Then what happens when election is done? The nomination is easy because the party list already went out and the gender aspect has been dealt with. But what we are having now, there will be those who will be nominated on merit, but you'll still have people's girlfriends and PAs making it and ascending to positions of leadership and then hurting the genuine women leaders who are trying to make a difference. Having said that, there is a place for affirmative action in the African context. Let me take, for example, the member for Mbita, Honorable Millie.
I was going to give you that example.
Yes, she was nominated to begin with.
Yes.
And her nomination showcased her leadership skills to a level now she was able to do competitive politics, not even as woman rep, as now, quote unquote, full MP, for lack of a better word, because women are elected, women reps are elected from the entire county. They are super MPs.
Yes.
But for some reason, we feel the constituency one is the full MP. And that, for me, is testament of the power of nomination. We've seen this with many other women leaders, but Honorable Millie stands out for me because her tenacity, even in ODM, there are times when they wanted to strangle and kick her out of the party. But the fact that she has proven her worth, they would rather find a way of taming her inside there because she has demonstrated and proved her worth. You look at people like Aisha Jumwa, same scenario, where the woman has proved her worth and now is counted as a leader, kiongozi, in her own right. So in my opinion, it's good when you try to find these solutions, but I hope it is not a stopgap measure. And when you hear something like the sunset clause, what a tragedy it would be for us to get to our 20th year and the seats run, the affirmative action runs out, and when you go to an election, you're worse off than where we are today.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out how whether it's men or women to, just in case at the election of 2022 we have more women than men and men are disadvantaged, how those nominees are going to be picked. I'm still trying to figure that out from the bill, and I will. But before we get there, the question I want to ask is, where do you balance the interest of those people who are saying punguza mzigo and reduce the wage bill in as far as the size of parliament, the number of parliamentarians is concerned, versus the interest of respecting the two-third gender role in the constitution? How do you balance that out?
One of the criticisms we've had of what we have now under the new constitution is that the National Assembly is so large that the quality of debate has gone down because people are just so many, the bills are so many. Catching the eye of the speaker has become ridiculously difficult. And as you have seen what we saw with the finance bill the other day, sometimes when there's critical issues that need to be dealt with, the masses become unruly and parliament becomes a house of dishonor. So in my opinion, having more people in the house is not a solution for better representation. Having less people in the house would actually give us better quality services from our MPs and better value for our service for MPs, especially when they start talking about extra perks for themselves. I look and I'm like, you know what, it's absolutely ridiculous. Why should we be, you know, they say when you're not in politics, you're out in the cold, and that's where 40 million of us are. I mean, the 200, 300 of you are the ones in the warmth, the rest of us out in the cold. How ridiculous. Or we are the ordinary 190. We need to come to a place where our National Assembly is cognizant of the fact that the quality of representation is based on how service is delivered and not just mere numbers. So in my opinion, when we have got a suggestion of more people in the House, we may find that things actually become worse in terms of representation, because you as professor here, when there's a bill that's really interesting, you know, and these are the regular ones, you look at the House and it's there are barely people inside. But when there's something very contentious, even that's how people are able to tweak the system, because they decide Flani and Flani and Flani and Flani are the ones who are going to talk, and the rest of you don't get to contribute. At the end of the day, are we really getting representation? So maybe it's about time we have that conversation of not just punguza mzigo for the sake of wage bill,
right,
but also for the quality of service that we're getting from our members of the National Assembly. And that's a conversation we must honestly have, because adding more people, well, even where will they put the seats?
Sam, I know the point that Joy is making is extremely important.
Right.
And I'd like to make a rejoinder. First, I want to speak from the perspective of what we have. I think from the time 2013,
right,
we've engaged experts in terms of finance and accounts from the Institute of Economic Affairs. In particular, I think you might have watched a lot Kwame Owino, who really just does figures.
Yes.
So first of all, what I want to demystify is the myth that even if we did not have a single woman elected, the wage bill would be expansive. Even if we did not have a single woman elected, we have had scenarios, and I think I know because you were part of the fight to try and look for a working mechanism. We had scenarios where we are saying, supposing we did not even have a single woman elected, which means that we would be looking at maybe getting like 90 or so. We find that in terms of real statistics based on the national budget, that the legislator, the parliament as it is really the least expensive branch of government. It accounts for only 1.5% of national spending. And we find that when we look at the spending as it occurs, the executive has 42 times more than the legislature. So first, I'd like Kenyans to know that we can indeed look at whether there are challenges, like I think you raised some really valid issues earlier, but wage bill, Punda Amechoka, is not really one of them. This is just someone who does not buy into this argument, and we respect everybody's position. But I would like to convey to Kenyans that getting more women for the sake of constitutionality, and especially ensuring that you provide a framework that does not make them just sit back and relax would work. And I also just wanted to quickly now come to the issue of you know, like the full member of parliament. And I'm glad that Joy raised the example of Millie, the honorable member for Suba North, Millie Odhiambo. We also have Ann Kibe, who was now a member of parliament. We have Wangari, Martha Wangari, who was nominated. So we have numbers, by the way, Sam, if you were to do the statistics. And I think I like figures. I like figures and I like numbers because they don't lie. You know, when we are talking about explanations and we are mobilizing, then you know we are going to find that there would be people who are fantastic mobilizers, and they will churn emotions and they will cloud people's eyes. If we look at the numbers, I think I would like to submit to Kenyans that affirmative action works. It works for any group that is disadvantaged. It works for persons with disability, it works for youth. Now we just are talking about women. And I would like to say that although the psyche, the culture, the understanding has always been that you are only a powerful politician if you compete against a man. There is absolutely no difference when you run for county women assembly and when we run for a single constituency. Why? Because politics, as Joy indicated, it's still very male. The political party machinery is male. The way that you're going to do the campaigns is male. For you to even get that particular woman to be the nominated flag bearer of a party, you really do have to engage in competitive, strategic politics at every level.
You said that you ran in 2007.
Yes, I did.
Did you in 2013?
No, in 2016.
In 2017?
2013 I didn't run, and 2017 I didn't run.
Why?
Because in 2007 when I ran, I think you will recall that we had this post-election challenge. And I got to be appointed Secretary for Children. I later on became Permanent Secretary.
Right.
And I think that when I ran, because I think it's always very important to ask people, why do you run for office? When I ran for political office, it's because I realized that politics was too important an agenda for me to be discouraged by the fracas and the way everybody jumps, and I wanted to get a chance to sit at the table and make decisions. And so I chose to leave the university and to run. I ran. And I think all the people in Alego Usonga hearing me now and there do know that I was a formidable candidate. As a matter of fact, I would say that what it is that stopped me was money. Because I would go and address people and I would talk to them about my manifesto. I was the first one to launch my campaign in the stadium that in Siaya is called the Hindi Garden, where it's formidable. People could not believe, and I did it. But you know, I would listen to people and even old men, and what they would look at me and say, child, you are saying good things, but you know, and then, you know, at that time, the then Member of Parliament, Edwin Yinda, I really couldn't compete in terms of the finances. So what happened was that I didn't get the ticket, but I think to show you that I was a formidable candidate, my party leader then, you know, the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga, actually did indicate that I could still take NAC, and I got the NAC ticket so that I would go and compete. Now, the challenge, even then as I did it, was financial. Because you see, there is the financial aspect, there's the traditional aspect. That particular MP who ran happens to be from the clan, like, quote, father figure to me. So what happened was that all this myriad of challenges, which I didn't give up on, so I fought. And I think it was because of my leadership that I was then gotten appointed to be Secretary for Children. In 2012, I figured that my goal for going to run was to serve. As Secretary for Children, I was really already in government. And I think to date there would be a lot of things people would say I was able to do. So I didn't want to just run for the sake of running. That is why I did not come out to run in 2013. And now in 2017, I needed to now be someone that also learns and models for other people. I looked at my pocket. You see, women who want to seriously go into politics must prepare early, must check on how it is that they get a strategy. And the way politics goes in Kenya right now, you must have succeeded in mobilizing either quite some substantial sum, or you check the candidates that are in the constituents or the position from which you want to run. So I think I will just tell you that in 2017, in my view, I thought my major concern was to check our party. And it is the party, the ODM, that even created a women's candidate coordination office. We had ways of ensuring that all those who faced violence were addressed. So I think I did not run. I don't want to run for politics just for my sake. I'd like to run to make a difference, to serve.
I'm asking that question because looking at her experience, like 2007, it was more financial, and then she didn't get that ticket. And then in the subsequent season, she realizes that she is called to service. And obviously, you cannot ignore the fact of the financial constraints that female candidates will face, or even the young people, whether male or female, and the challenge of how you find the ground. Sometimes it's chaotic for you. So even if you pick candidates and nominate them to Parliament, I'm not speaking any doom, but she's now a nominated Member of Parliament. But it's not an assurance that at the next election she'll have resolved her financial constraints. So essentially, what do we do to our electoral process so that we do not have to struggle with the financial constraints and these perceptions that are in the political field, so that we have female candidates and the younger people elected to Parliament?
Sam, if you allow me just 1 minute, Joy, before you come in. It is not just financial, and I really don't want us to lose this. Nominating women gives them the ground. It gives them the exposure, it gives them the visibility. Joy had a very good word. It showcases their leadership in politics. So I think that when we are thinking of nominating women, when we are thinking of ensuring that we use a mechanism that puts women in the political platform, it is the surest way to break the methods of gender dominance, which are making women look ridiculous, burdening women with guilt and shame, withholding them information from them. You nominate women, such as myself and others, they really have no excuse, monetary or otherwise, not to get out there and compete competitively, and those who have moved really will get to that. I just wanted to emphasize that.
Your response to that?
There's one thing that I think is a tragedy in Kenya today. When we had our 2017 elections, it was dubbed to be one of the most expensive elections in the world. Kenyans have monetized their elections to a level where, if you look at what it takes to be elected governor, for example, they say you need to have a war chest of around 500 million shillings. I mean, 500 million shillings on what you're earning as governor, when are you going to recover that money? It sets us up. And I keep saying this repeatedly. Kenyans, hear me. We set up our Waheshimiwa for massive failure. Because if you spend all this money to get elected, when you get into office, you have to find ways and means of not only recovering what you spent, but making more for the next election. Now, one of the ways we've tried to tame this is having a campaign finance bill, a campaign finance mechanism. Another way is using the political parties mechanism, saying political parties are going to be public funded. So if they're going to be public funded, the accounts must be public documents so that we can see where you're getting your money from. In other countries, we've got rules about receiving money, for example, from foreigners. In Kenya, we don't have. You can go and fundraise in the Cayman Islands and come back with a war chest of money from the Caymans. We don't even know from which tax evaders those are who have put their money there, because that's a tax haven. But away from that, not only do we not manage how we do our campaign financing, we also don't manage how we do our political party accountability. So we get to a place where a lot of money is used during elections. And I like what Mheshimiwa has said. It actually becomes a barrier. Because everywhere you go to Kenya today, sindikiza sera, sindikiza sera is the word. Yeah, sera zako ni nzuri, lakini sindikiza sera. And it's ridiculousness. And it's even pervaded into, let me give my own example. When I was running for LSK Vice Chair, I thought I was running for office of my peers. And what should be, should be important is the engagement of the minds. But you get to a place and people expect there'll be a little reception, and there'll be some food and drink. Before you talk to them, they're sitting nice and comfortable, and they've had an evening of general relaxation. It's not a bad thing. It's a very expensive thing. You think you will call up people on the phone and just have a discussion? They're like, no, when are you coming? We want to see you. Do you really want this thing? Or do you?
Yes.
And by the time I was done with that election, the amount of money I'd spent was absolutely ridiculous. And I looked at it and I realized, by monetizing our campaigns to that level, we actually lock out ideas from part of the conversation. It becomes who has the deeper pockets. When we've looked at even politics in Nairobi, Nairobi is the place where anybody can run. You don't have to be a certain tribe or a certain clan or a certain what. Anybody can run in Nairobi. But in Nairobi especially, even for the seat of an MCA, you need to have at least 10 million.
Whoa.
How are you going to run for office if you are not taking an easy pay loan and a loan from your father and mortgaging your house? And then if you lose, what do you do? What do you do from there? That tells me, therefore, something is wrong with our system, and that's why it doesn't work. When I was talking about mixed member proportional representation, one of the other benefits it has is that people don't elect individuals. They elect parties. So it's the party that works hard to win seats, and then the members go in. That means the individuals are insulated from the impact of having to fork out the money. Over and above that, that thing of the MP becoming the #1 de facto Harambe machinery also is taken away, because this person did not come to you with handouts to get the seat. So you don't expect handouts from them even while they are serving. So we need to have that conversation and that change of psyche, because it's gotten us to a place where we are not getting the leaders we should because of the money.
All right, and of course the conversation on this gender bill continues. As I said, that tomorrow Parliament will be debating that particular debate that proposes that at the end of general election, then of course IEBC will look at the party list that would have been submitted way in advance before an election. And I just want to take you through Article 90 of the Constitution of Kenya, of course, which is being amended so that it doesn't limit this nomination to the members of county assemblies, but also the in as far as Parliament is concerned. And essentially it says that the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission shall be responsible for the conduct and supervision of elections for seats provided for under Clause 1, and that is the nomination slots to achieve the gender principle. And each political party participating in a general election will be required to nominate and submit a list of all the persons who would stand elected if the party were to be entitled to all the seats provided for under Clause 1. And that Clause 1 is in as nominating so as to ensure that the gender rule is achieved. And Part B of that says that except in the case of seats provided for under Article 98(1)(b), each party list comprises the appropriate number of qualified candidates and alternates between male and female. So it would indicate that you go to an election with an open mind, that it might be a majority are men or majority are female, so that you have a list that would ensure that should, let's say, the ODM political party wins all the seats in Parliament, but they do not meet the gender principle, then there will be a list of male, female, and then you pick the gender that is disadvantaged to ensure that you have at least a third of the gender represented. So that would essentially add up to the numbers in Parliament. I think from the calculations of last week, it was going to be an additional 42 members of Parliament, of course, being female.